Hi guys, it's February 28, 2020, TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. So it's Friday. We're here in Childers with hubby. So we're here to check the zoo. What do you call the zoo in here? What is the name of the zoo? You can check. So here's the place. So it says entrance. So that way, we're going that way for the entrance. So dito, do we need to pay?
We do.
We need to pay pala for entrance. I thought it's free. Guys, yan yung kanilang schedule. So every Wednesday they are closed. So here, children must be under the supervision of an adult at all times. No smoking, no animals allowed. So we're gonna pay $5. Ay, how much is it? Adults?
Two, love. So one adult, one or
3 adults.
3 adults.
3 adults.
So 2 adults.
Immature. I'm an immature adult.
And you pay for 2. One adult and
So yeah guys.
45 for 2. And it's just $25 for the next one.
Ticket
In
ito.
your hand, love. In your hand. In your hand.
In my hand. Oh, like that too. I like that too. For sale. Yang blue tongue lizards. Look oh. Bookmarks. Okay, we'll start our ventures. We'll start our ventures, guys. So, they have snake pictures taking snake.
Oh my God.
Snake show. So it's a snake show, guys. Because that's what in here. See. 10 a.m. snake show.
He's gonna rap, but it's just him holding on. So I need you to, don't grab it, just nice and open. Ese welcome to.
Ja, מה אתה בא? יאללה, ליאם, בשביל האינסטגרם, מה? בשביל האינסטגרם. Do it for the Instagram.
הוא הכי יפה, אבל...
He's showing his stuff.
איזה תמונה.
כאילו, תחברו לו את הפה, אחי.
איזה חברה נהדרת. אמא, יש לך את אבא שלי ובאלה.
דברים שעושים באוסטרליה. איפה נראה חיות נראה באוסטרליה?
Alright, is anyone else gonna have a hold or a
You want to try? Yes, you want to try?
No.
You don't like?
Everyone's all good?
Yeah.
Gusto ko sana magpa-picture kaya lang natakot talaga ako sa sa ahas.
So, okay, we're going to koala encounter, guys. Thank you.
No worries.
First left. This is okay. Oh, we have a talk to the koalas. You know, guys. Well, it's sleeping.
Oh.
Hiding from the tree. Sleeping, nappy time.
That's Charlie. Hello, Charlie.
Oh, that one is almost off now.
That's Matilda. Hello, Matilda. Hello. Really clinging to the tree, eh?
Gotta give me 20 hours a day.
Plenty of time.
Why is she shaking? Oh, itchy. Itchy back. Itchy.
Might as well just start. So yeah, as I said, 3 female kangaroos. Matilda's 19, Bonnie's 10, and then Charlotte's 8. So yeah, 8 to 10 years in the wild, 12 to 15 years in captivity. So yeah, Matilda's an old koala. The oldest one that we heard of lived in captivity till the grand age of 23. So Matilda's very healthy. We're hoping we have a lot more years left with her because she's very sweet most of the time and a fair bit cheeky as well. So koalas are found around the Cairns and Atherton Tablelands area, all the way down the east coast and then around into South Australia. The biggest populations in Queensland, you'll find them around Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast and the southeast corner. Around here they're found around the Gingin area, Tanana, Maryborough, Borrolacavie Bay. They used to live around here most likely and at Cadalbur as well, but they were probably built out of the area as more people moved in. In Queensland and New South Wales, they are considered vulnerable, but in Victoria, they're considered to have a healthy population with the biggest group in Gippsland. Obviously, we've had a lot of fires though since those stats were taken, so it could have changed since then. Koalas that live down south, they're bigger, they have thicker fur, and they're brown in colouring. So these girls are called Queensland because they're smaller and they're grey. Koalas have 3 fingers and 2 thumbs. You might be able to see it just here. So there's her 2 thumbs and her 3 fingers.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very useful for grabbing food to eat and things like that. And they also have what we call a grooming claw. Where's the grooming claw? So you can see the grooming claw just here. It's 1 toe and it's got 2 nails on it. So that acts basically like a comb. On her one over here, it's got some hair in it. So yeah, they work very well to be able to grab off bits of hair and skin and things like that. Koalas also have a backwards facing pouch. So that the purpose of that is to keep the joey secure when the mother's sitting in forks of trees or when it's walking along so that the joey can't fall out. Koalas sleep for 16 to 20 hours per day.
No.
And they eat between 400 and 600 grams of eucalyptus. So that's about equal to 2 shopping bags full. They sleep so much because eucalyptus has no energy. It's about 55% water. So you won't often see them drinking except in extreme circumstances like extreme heat, drought, bushfires, things like that. Koalas are very fussy. There's about 700 varieties of eucalyptus, but out of those they'll only eat about 25 to 30. And all koalas have their favourites. Our girls prefer one called swamp mahogany, so they got some of it last night. You can see where the new shoots were. There's no new shoots anymore. So koalas don't eat all of this leafy stuff down here. They only eat the fresh shoots on top. So that makes it especially difficult. So breeding times between August and March. Koalas are only pregnant for 33 to 35 days before they give birth to a jelly bean-sized joey. So it's only very small. It'll make its way up into the mother's pouch, where it will attach itself to one of 2 teats, and it'll spend the next 6 or 7 months there, drinking and growing. At this point, it will start to pop its head out of the pouch, but it can't eat eucalyptus straight away. Eucalyptus is actually toxic. So to fix this, the mother produces what we call pap. It's like a watered down feces. So the joey will drink that a couple of times over the coming months to prepare its gut to be able to eat eucalyptus. And at 12 months of age, it's completely independent from its mother. There used to be millions of koalas in Australia, but these days the figure sits at about 80,000 or potentially less now since all the bushfires. The main reason for this is until 1936 it was actually legal to kill koalas. Their fur was used for packaging and stuffed toys and things like that. In 1 month alone in Queensland, approximately 800,000 koalas were killed. So it wasn't even Australia that finally figured out that it was wrong what they were doing. It was actually America who started. So Teddy Roosevelt, he banned the imports of koala products into America in 1927, and eventually the rest of the world slowly followed, and by 1936 koalas were protected in Australia, one of the first animals to be protected here. By that point though, their population had already been destroyed so much that it will never reach the same as it used to be. And the main reason for this is they breed really slowly. So one koala will only have a joey every 2 or 3 years. On the off chance that the mother has twins, sometimes the twin won't make it out of the pouch, only one will make it out of the pouch. Or if they are lucky, joeys can easily fall off the mother's back if there's 2 because there's not enough room for both of them. Koalas can get a disease called chlamydia. So it affects their reproductive system, so it can make them sterile. It can make their bladders and their kidneys shut down, which will eventually kill them, or it can make them blind, which obviously if they live in trees, blindness isn't very helpful for them. We destroyed a lot of their habitat before we realised that they don't eat all eucalyptus, and some of their land is still continued to be cleared for developments and things like that. They often get hit by cars, especially males searching for a mate, and they can drown in swimming pools. So if you live in an area where there are koalas and you have got a swimming pool, what we suggest is you put a rope in with some knots on it so the koala has an escape route if necessary. Pets can also harm koalas. So say your dog chases a koala. Even if the dog doesn't catch the koala, they're very prone to stress, so they can actually die just by being stressed out. If you ever find an injured koala or any other animal for that fact, 1300 animal is the number that you want to call. They can tell you what to do with the animal to get it the help that it needs. With koalas, if you do find one that's injured, we suggest that you don't pick them up. You may be trying to help, but they don't realise that. They have very sharp claws and they've also got a very strong bite. Our 3 girls, they were all rescued originally. They were brought in and tested for chlamydia, which they thankfully didn't have, but they all had cysts on their ovaries. So their ovaries had to be removed so they can no longer breed. So because of this, they weren't able to be released into the wild, because we don't want koalas in the wild that are competing for food with viable breeding koalas. So that's the end of our koala talk. The venomous snake show is in about 45 minutes, so feel free to browse the rest of the park before then. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them.
Can we hold the koala?
We don't actually hold our koalas because they were from the wild. They can get very stressed out if we pick them up. But we do encounters where you get to come in and pat them and get a photo with them.
Okay, we're going inside. Emus in training. Emus in training. Important, please do not feed the emus or leave kangaroo food on the ground. Thank you. Oh, there's a, what do you call that? Ostrich? Oops.
Ostrich.
Ostrich. Look at him. Is he a boy? Oh. Hata. It's moving at me. Look at the back. Oh. Hello, baby. Look at the kangaroos. It's a male kangaroo, guys. No entry. Oh, you cannot enter. I'll show you. There. Hello, babies.
Look, there's one over there, hopping.
Where?
There, behind the shed. Look.
Ah.
See?
Yeah.
Those people?
Yeah.
One there.
We'll go there. Look at them. They're all standby. I think this is a male.
תהיי פה לי ואני אצלם. הנה עכשיו ככה טיל. יש לנו את זה. רגע עוד אחד עוד.
Sila to mosquito. Yes. Press the. Hello, baby. Hi. Guys. Finally, I've touched a kangaroo.
Can you take this one? Mine?
Ah,
Israel.
Oh, Israel.
Israel.
Wow, that's a long way, isn't it? How long you here for?
Hello,
We
baby.
came to travel. We traveled in New Zealand for 2 months.
You know, that's my dream, baby. To touch a kangaroo. Now I did. Thank you, baby.
That's nice.
Yeah, where are we from?
It's nice, good.
Oh, you're
It's a nice lad.
Yeah, but we're working, so.
He knows how to
Yeah.
entertain.
It's a good time.
Did. You know how to entertain people. You're working hard, baby. He's digging something. He's digging something. Done with the kangaroo encounter and ostrich. Ostrich. So here in Childers, Downunder, it's a zoo. So we check some.
Very hot.
We check some animals here.
מה הסיפור שלהם?
Mostly koala and kangaroo, wallaby and ostrich.
Amy.
We didn't
Amy.
emu,
Amy.
and we didn't get a chance to catch the crocodile. Maybe he's resting. He's resting. So that's it, guys.
This is a quite
It's a snake show,
well-known
guys.
snake if you're in Australia, but probably misnamed most of the time anyway. This fella is, maybe 12 years old now. Now, could grow to 3.5 metres though. They've certainly been recorded at that length. Now, because of the colour and the size that they can get to, they're often called a king brown snake. But they're actually not a brown snake. They don't belong to that brown snake group or genus. This fella actually belongs to the black snake genus. So he's more closely related to red-bellied blacks, for instance. And some of you in the first snake show saw that collet snake, the big orangey fella. So to try and avoid any confusion, they tend to call them mulga snakes these days. Got a terrible reputation of being very aggressive, but not a lot of foundation to all the stories about them. And I think a lot of it's got to do with the other name. You know, once you call something a king brown, it's got to be big and nasty. But try and imagine him, say he was 3 metres long. So actually if you say he's 3.5 metres, so the maximum size, this is 4 metres wide. It's a bit of a comparison. So if he was the maximum size recorded, he could be perhaps about that long. That's a big snake, isn't it? But he'd still only be about that high off the ground. Now you compare that to a human, we're up here. It really would be like you and I taking on something the size of one of those big trees over there, which you're really not going to do, are you? Unless you feel threatened. You're going to want to stay from a giant, away from a giant like that. Now these certainly will defend themselves vigorously if they feel that they're being threatened. There is an initial bluff, so what they'll tend to do is flatten their body out. They'll make themselves look as big as possible. But if they're given the choice, they would much prefer to leave us alone. Now their venom is not incredibly toxic. It is still in the top 20. It's about a quarter as toxic as the Indian cobra. Now they use the common cobra as a comparison because most people know what that particular snake looks like, you know, the snake charmer snake. So a quarter as toxic. The mulgas produce massive amounts of venom, so it's the quantity of venom rather than its toxicity that can cause problems with humans. One of these actually holds the world record for venom yield for a single bite. That was long looking, and that was astronomical. But not a lot of deaths attributed to mulga snake bites, which again is surprising considering the reputation that they have. They have an immunity to other Australian snake venoms too. So if he was to grab hold of another venomous snake in the wild and that snake bit him, he wouldn't be affected by its venom. A lot of black snakes have that immunity, at least to the venomous snakes that they come into contact with. Now these are found over most of mainland Australia, by the way. Apart from the coastline, from about Rockhampton down around southeastern and very southern parts of Australia. You're probably going to have to go to the other side of the range to find them in those areas. And they do vary in colour depending on where they're from. This one's from the Longreach area. We've got another one from Western Queensland who's a really coppery colour, very nice coppery colour. And another one from Alice Springs who's kind of a yellowy colour. Now this is very different looking. He's a death adder, this one. So they have been recorded at 1 metre in length, but that would be quite unusual to get to that size. It's not very long, but they're quite a heavily built snake. This one's actually a common death adder, but a Jara colourful. Now there's 7 distinct species of death adders in Australia, and they're found all over Australia, apart from Tasmania and most of Victoria. But they really haven't taken very well to living where humans live, so they are rarely encountered these days, unless you're venturing into quite untouched sort of country. Now they're ambush feeders, so So rather than actively hunting, they lay in wait. So what they'll do, they'll often find a trail that's been used on a regular basis by little animals, and you'll find that they'll curl up next to that trail, and they'll just sort of work themselves into the leaf litter and stones and disappear. What they do next is then bring the tip of the tail, this tail tip, around towards the head end. Now that tail tip, the little yellow tip there, that's used as a lure. So when the little animal comes walking down the track that's lying next to it, you see the tip of the tail and just start to wriggle. And then you'll pick it up, you'll wave it around. It really takes on a life of its own. And it's just irresistible to the little animal. It thinks it's food. When it comes a bit closer to the rock, bang. These are one of the fastest striking snakes in the world. Potentially quite dangerous. For an Australian snake, they've got quite long fangs. For a little snake, they've got a relatively large venom yield. And the other thing with them is that their main defence is camouflage. So if you're walking through the bush and there just happens to be a death adder out there in front of you, it's not going to take off and hide like most snakes will do. They stay completely still. Because that's the whole idea, isn't it, with camouflage. If you don't move, you can't be seen. Obviously on a plastic green grass it doesn't really work, does it? But the banding in the bush makes them very hard to see. I'm going to say something else about that. I can't remember. Now, the name death adder comes from the old days, and they were encountered a lot more frequently in those old days. First aid for snake bite in those days was quite primitive. It was the old cut and suck method, and but more importantly, there was no antivenom available. So there actually used to be a 50% death rate from a death adder bite in those days. But these days, it's just unheard of. Now they're live bearers, so don't give birth, they don't lay eggs, they give birth to live young. 20 odd is not uncommon, and I think I've heard of it a few more than that. Not doing much today. They tend not to do too much at all. They'll just lie there and keep still.
Why do you cover it with a blanket?
Sorry, did you ask a question?
Yeah. I said, why is it covered with a blanket?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's just so that it just can't see any movement, so it tends to just relax then. Yeah. This one. Some of you might recognise it. You guys from Australia? Yeah. No? You're not? You are? Yeah. Yeah. You might be able to. Not very distinctive, but you should see some patterning here. Yeah, this one is a tiger snake. Call it a tiger snake because of that banding. They're not always banded though. Tiger snakes come in a tremendous range of colours, sizes, sort of shapes really too. And they have various toxicities in their venom, depending on where they are found in mostly in the southern part of Australia, due to food preference and that sort of thing. So the largest of them found on Chapel Island. Those have been recorded at 3 metres. Yeah, no, 2 metres plus, probably about 2.5 metres. The most toxic of them are from around the Eyre Peninsula area in South Australia. This one's actually from Kangaroo Island, so pretty toxic too. Another one with a bad reputation, but again would generally like to avoid conflict with humans. Got a really impressive threat display though, which gives the impression of being a very aggressive snake. Now they are another live bearer. Up to 40 is not uncommon at all, but we did hear one that was relocated from a residence in Victoria a few years ago now by a snake catcher. So he did the right thing, drove out into the bush the next day, tipped the snake out of the bag. Out with mum came 121 little baby snakes. So you can imagine the property owner was very appreciative when she found out that it was removed before she gave birth. Now in the wild though, of course, very few of those would actually survive. Maybe 4 or 5 of them would survive. They're very small, particularly with a large number of babies, and lots of things like to eat baby snakes. And if you're a baby tiger snake, that does include mum after quite a short period of time. If she would have come across any of those baby snakes, they more than likely end up as a bit of a snake. So mum may have eaten a few in the bag too. There might have even been more than 121. She's already consumed a few.
Fantastic.
So this fellow won't grow too much more than this actually. A little bit, but not too much.
I just wanted to snake with the neurotoxin.
They have a very strong neurotoxin. Most of our snakes do have neurotoxin. Other snakes like puff adders, rattlesnakes and so on have neurotoxins as well, but a massive amount of cytotoxin, which is the tissue destroying core component. So possibly not as dangerous as the snakes, but do an awful lot of damage. Because we've got very few snakes that have that massive tissue affecting. It's called a cytotoxin. What these do have is a myotoxin, and that destroys muscle, and it breaks it down. And what happens is your kidneys can't cope with the byproduct of that muscle breakdown. So even if you survive the neurotoxin, you would possibly, with that treatment, you would possibly die within a week or so because your kidneys would fail. But these days with the first aid and antivenom, it's, to die from a snake bite, you've got to be unlucky. So this one, made up something awful when I put him out of his enclosure today. Just now. See how he goes to the ground here.
It's fast.
Oh no, that's all right. I thought there was a hole there. No, you're okay. Okay, now he's very dark, isn't he? Any ideas what this one might be?
Reptile?
Yeah, no, he's not actually, but you'd think it was a black snake, wouldn't you? He's actually an eastern brown snake. Very confusing colour-wise. Even just in this local area, around the children's area, you'll see eastern browns that are kind of yellowy, orangey, grey, any shade of brown through to be more black than him, a really dark, pitch black. Often they do have a lighter coloured head, or they can have an orangey head, coppery sort of coloured head. Sometimes they're banded or speckling, so the colour of a snake is really no indication at all as to what species it is. Now the correct way to identify snakes is scale count. Not really recommended that you go catching a snake and counting the scales. If you've got a dead one you could do that, but with a live one really you go by the general appearance. It's hard for visitors, but if you're a local you get to know the different sort of shapes and sort of things of a snake. Brown snakes have got a slimmer build than the blacks and the tiger snakes. Quite a small, narrow head. Again, different to tigers and black snakes, and not much of a neck. Not a lot of distinction between head and forehead. Now, when I'm talking about identifying snakes, though, it's really only for your own peace of mind. So if you have to see a snake in your garden and you can identify it as being non-venomous, well, at least you can relax a little bit. If you were unlucky enough to be bitten by a snake in Australia, and you've got to be unlucky, you don't have to try and identify the snake that's bitten you. Now, in the old days, you did have to try and catch it or kill it, then you took it in to be identified. Now, that was dangerous. A lot of secondary bites happened that way, and they were often identified incorrectly. Now, these days, hospitals have got venom detection kits, and that will tell the staff what type of antivenom is required for that particular bite. That's why it's important not to try and wash the venom off the bite site, because they'll swab the bite site and they'll pick up the minute traces of venom left on the skin. Now, I suppose it is a boring name, isn't it? A decent brown or common brown, but the venom is the second most toxic in the world. 12 times more toxic than the Indian condom, which does make it 48 times more toxic than the mulga or the kangaroo.
He is 2 times more toxic than a cobra.
12 times. 12 times, yeah.
I've seen ones like that are really light brown with the same colour like head.
Yeah,
I've never seen black.
very, very confusing. They're actually more toxic than the coastal taipan, but they're not considered to be quite as dangerous. They've got tiny little fangs and a relatively small venom yield. But it's because these are so common and they've taken rather well to living where people live, these are now responsible for more human deaths in Australia than any other snake. But having said that, quite important, on average 12 people die in Australia from horse riding accidents. On average 1 person dies from a snake bite. But you don't hear about horse riding accidents on the TV news and so on, do you? But if it's a snake bite or a crocodile attack or a shark bite, it's all over the news, isn't it? So it just puts it in perspective a little bit. Now, as I mentioned, they love living where people live. Why did you do this when I got you out of the enclosure today? It's nice and calm here. Love living where people live. You know, gardens provide them with lovely places to hide in and hunt in, and a cool spot on a hot day. One of the favourite foods too as an adult are rats and mice. Of course, where you get humans, you do get the odd rat and mouse. And if you get a build-up of rodents, you're most likely to do an attraction of brown snake. Now, it's very hard to keep a brown snake out of your garden, but what you can do is make your garden less attractive for it to want to stay. So if you do have a bit of a rodent problem, try trapping or baiting safely, get rid of the initial attractant. Anything stored in your backyard, you know, sheets of iron, timber, try and store those sorts of things off the ground. So you're not providing a tight spot for a snake to squeeze into your sucker. I want to stay. And keep your lawns nice and short, yards uncluttered, so at least if they're passing through, you can see them, and then you can avoid them. And that really is the safest thing to do if you see a brown snake in your garden, leave it alone. Call the local snake catcher. If you try and catch them yourself, they get very defensive, and a really good way of being bitten by a brown snake is to try and catch it or kill it. So local snake catcher is the way to go. Suppose you're going to fire up and they'll put you back in.
He's fast.
He's fast.
You are going to fire up, aren't you?
Whoa.
You don't like to be in the kitchen.
Well, it's been like this for a few weeks now.
Aggressive.
No, we've been using it for years and years and years. Must be cold weather. There we go.
She don't like it.
Catch it. Okay. The next a couple of snakes are taipans.
Soda?
This one is inland taipan.
No.
And she's coming up to shedding her skin, so she's looking a bit dull at the moment. But the other taipan we use is doing the same, so unfortunately we've just picked this one today. The other one's about to shed his skin any minute, so his skin's quite delicate, the old skin, so got to use her. Now this, yeah, she's usually a bright yellow colour underneath and would be more yellowy on top at the moment, but she's quite dull. Now this is the species with the most toxic venom in the world. Now it's nearly 80 times more toxic than the Indian cobra. Toxic enough to kill nearly 500,000 mice with the one bite, which is, at this stage, that's how they measure toxicity, but it just gives you a little bit of an idea. Nearly 10 times more toxic than the coastal taipan, but again, not considered quite as dangerous. Smaller fangs, smaller venom yield, better temperament. And this species is found in an area in central Australia where they rarely come into contact with humans. There have actually been no recorded human deaths from this species. Whereas you take the Indian cobra, the common cobra as a comparison, they kill thousands of people every year still because of the frequency of contact and probably lack of immediate first aid. So again, just puts it in perspective.
So what exactly happens if one of these bites me?
Okay, very, very strong neurotoxin again. So that tends to just stop your the nerve signals working, and most people die from asphyxiation because the diaphragm stops working. Your muscles moving the diaphragm, so you stop breathing. Yeah. They also have a very strong muscle destroying component too. So if for some reason or other you were able to survive the neurotoxin, which would be unusual, your muscles would just dissolve and your kidneys would pack in. Yeah.
So how many times I have until it?
Look, there's too much variability because it depends on your size and the size of the snake. So the bigger the snake, the more venom potentially, and the amount of venom they inject, because they can control that.
And how many?
They can control the actual amount of venom. I've actually heard of a couple of dry bites from one of these, no venom at all. But if you were to perhaps try and kill it, or you stand in it by accident, it's going to turn around and give you lots. And I think I've read somewhere an average snake, average yield about 20 minutes. No, it's actually about 40 minutes, yeah. But it could be 5 minutes, or it could be the next day. So there's lots of variables. What is a constant is the first aid for all Australian snakes. That's the compression and mobilisation. If you immobilise and compress the bitten limb immediately, that gives you hours to get to help, or the help to get to you.
The venom doesn't really.
Yeah. So so it's not the tourniquet. You know the old method with the tourniquet. That stops the blood flowing.
Yeah.
The venom actually moves around your body in the lymphatic system before it gets to the bloodstream. Lymph is very easy to stop moving by applying pressure, and it needs muscle movement to pump it through. So if you're not moving, you're not pumping. So if you were bitten, you sit down or lie down, whatever makes you comfortable, and somebody else has got to do all the work.
Yeah.
So if you're bitten here, you start at the fingertips, work all the way around, over the bite, so up to your armpit. On the leg, start at the toes, go all the way up to your groin if you can. So use a couple of bandages or a shirt, but keep still. And so you can you can sling or split anything to stop movement. No, as yet, nobody's ever died from an Australian snake bite where that technique has been used immediately. But it's got to be done straight away. So if you were, now maybe you're walking through the countryside and you're checking out some of the sites, it's no good having the bandage back in the vehicle. You know, where somebody's going to walk you, stick it in your pocket or your backpack and so on, so you can put it on straight away. Very simple, but very, very effective.
And the younger snakes also can control the venom, or
younger snakes too. There's a bit of a wives' tale really that younger snakes can't control. They'll give you lots of venom. But I think really what it is a small snake is scared of everything.
also they.
So it's more likely to go and give you heaps.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas the big old boy thinks, we might just bite you and take off, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
But I wouldn't rely on that.
They are recharged, like if he is biting you, they are recharging the venom.
Yes, very quickly. And they also, I was speaking to somebody who milks venom. You know, they milk venom for research and anti-venom. There's always a lot of venom in reserve. They can never get it all out. There's a lot of venom still left after milking. And then they start to recharge as well. So never think. That's why some people ask me whether we milk the snakes first before we bring them in here, but that would be wouldn't be any point. Yeah.
But you have the option to get the venom out.
But it wouldn't be any point in doing it. Yeah, and we don't do it for part of our business because we haven't got enough of each species. The institutes that do milk for anti-venom and research may have 30 taipans and maybe 50 eastern browns, so there's a lot of them to work with.
No, but for your safety and like.
Oh yeah, no, it wouldn't be any use. Yeah. Because you'd still, even if I milked her now and I got a bite from her straight away, I'd still be in venom. Yeah.
No, but there is like no option to put all of the venoms out.
Ah,
Or cut the.
there's one person in Victoria who removes the venom glands. The venom glands are in the cheeks here. He takes the venom glands out. Very, very controversial.
That's it.
And he fills that with silicone. You know silicone?
Yeah.
He fills the gap with silicone. Otherwise, cheeks like this. But it's not a vet. Very controversial. Nobody agrees with what it does. So what the snakes we use, we just try. So I don't know what's wrong with them, but we try and make them relax and feel comfortable with what we're doing, so they don't feel scared. That's the best thing to do. Yeah. And you can see here she's quite relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ממש חופים רכים לא טוב. הארץ לא עובד בדם, עובד בניפונים ממש, ולפני שזה נכנס לדם.
זה סתם לקבע כאילו?
אז הוא אמר, כי ניפונים זה אפילו מעל הדם, והוא אמר שכאילו אפילו תחבושת עוצר את הדם. לא צריך חופים רכים.
Now the last one is the coastal taipan.
You don't do red bellies.
That's in the first snake show. Yeah, we do a python and black snake show. So red belly would be just underneath, as far as toxicity, the mulga snake. Mulga is about 25% as toxic. There's a common cobra, red belly is about 22, something like that. Yeah. Not considered to be a particularly dangerous snake.
Oh, because I heard that the red belly wasn't the fourth most venomous snake.
Oh, no. Way down. Yeah. There were 2 deaths recorded, I think in the early 1900s, 2 children. This was prior to the anti-venom and that sort of thing. You might feel like dying because it's extraordinarily painful.
So you won't particularly die from it?
No, but you still seek treatment because there's always a possibility. The thing is, you might have a particular reaction to some of the toxins in these venom, so you might react more adversely to another person. So I always do the first aid and seek medical help. And individual snakes have slight variability, so you can't really say, oh, okay, red belly, you'll be right, just suck it up. Do the first aid, get help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's showing.
There you go.
It's ready to go.
So this is T-Rex. He's actually good now, but we called him T-Rex because he used to have not a very pleasant temperament whatsoever. But he's actually quite good. So this is a coastal taipan. These things can grow to over 3 meters. Have been recorded. That would be rare, but often over 2.5 meters. So can get to be a very large snake. Very athletic, very fast. Where they are found, they'll often disappear before you even see them. You won't even know they were there. But if they feel that they're being threatened at all, they certainly can press home. It's very it's a defensive thing really, but it's quite a fearsome retaliation, if you like. He most often does this. He's not one in the fall. You alright? You going to come down or not?
It's moving now.
Jungle python, né? Guarda, você vê no plástico, tudo mais que custa, vai.
אני חשבתי שיש פה אחד ירוק, אבל זה צינור. אבל יש פה צינור. זה יפה שם.
כן. וככה לשריקה אחרת, הגינה.
שמעתי תמונה, כאילו, ראיתי את זה?
Another wood. You can see it a little bit there. I can disturb it a little bit. No,
איזה תמונה?
למה שאת צריכה לשמר אותה?
that's a jungle python. You can see it here.
אולי כל כך כבדה שלא יכול לעשות יו.
היא נופלת.
יו. הוא ממש חי. והחברה ביניהם כנראה
איזה דביקה, אתה יודע,
איפה הוא אוכל אותו?
הוא לא אוכל חברים. בדיוק אתמול.
Top and carpet python. That's a big one.
לא, זה בלוטו. מה, כאילו באמת חברים? תראי כמה כלוב יש לו לשבת, הוא יכול לשבת עליו.
יש פה גם יכול שקשור כאלה. טוב,
יו, בדיוק.
לקרן היה חופים בבית.
Red, black-headed python.
שמגדלים אותם?
דברים קפואים באמת.
כלוב?
זה אקווריום כזה.
יושבים ככה באחד המפעילים.
כן.
הם באים זה.
Nagpo-yan, guma. It's a guma.
סיים את כל החבילה.
There's a frog in there.
זה צבעים של הפתיח משמעות.
זה צבעים של בגדים של שעושים...
Look, the snake inside. The frog.
צבעים של הפתיח? לא.
green python, green snake. Dead. Richard, can you move a little? Edda. Eddie. Hello, Eddie.
This one is hiding.
Yeah, look this one.
I'm looking for him in Ace.
Go there.
Oh, smallest python there. Smallest python. And his head is up there. Wrapping it. That one is big as well. Scrap python. Is he dead? Or just sleeping?
That's it?
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah,